David, thanks so much for coming
Okay, mate.
on Access TV. I know it's probably a little bit beneath you, but
Oh, come on, beneath.
You're worldwide.
No,
but,
there's no beneath or above. You know, these are all vehicles for getting information out, and they're all equally important.
Access TV. A lot of people in Austin, Texas, watch Access TV. You'd be surprised. You know, we have people like Alex Jones and Jeff Contreras and Chris Athanas on Access TV there, and so people get their start on Access TV.
Yeah, I've done a few Access TV interviews around America, and in many ways they are a very important way of getting information out, because the mainstream just wants to jump on this stuff. You know, mustn't tell people the truth. It might affect advertising.
Yeah. First of all, tell us who David Icke is.
Well, I was born in what we call in England a working class family in a big council estate back in 1952. And I was brought up with a father who was very much a questioner of the system. He was in the medical corps during the war and saw that you know, people were used as fodder. He also saw the way that people were living in abject poverty in the places he went to, actually around fantastic riches and things like the Roman Catholic Church and what have you. And he was very cynical about the whole system of life and the way that people are controlled. So I was kind of brought up in that. I was always very questioning of authority. And I became a professional soccer player. That finished with arthritis when I was 21, and I became a journalist. And I was a newspaper journalist, and then radio, and then I became a network anchorman for the BBC. And then during the 80s, I started to realize that the way the world was controlled was nothing like what we believed it was. That although there appeared to be different sides in politics and what have you, if you went behind the scenes, the sides started to disappear into one. And then in the late 80s, early 90s, I went through a massive transformation within myself, and I started to see the world in a very different way. And I started a journey, which is still going, in which there was a trickle of information to start with, that the world was not like we thought it was. And I just followed it. And the trickle of information has become a tidal wave now, and it's taken me into areas that, my goodness me, I never thought I'd be going. And I've been to more than 40 countries researching this. I do it full time, and the world's very different now when I look through my eyes than it was 13 years ago when I started, that's for sure.
Well, you discuss the New World Order in a lot of your books. Tell the people of Austin, Texas, hopefully they've heard about the New World Order, but what is the New World Order?
Well, the whole theme of my books really is what has become known as the New World Order, the code name for, in effect, let's not hide the fact, a global fascist state. What you can pick up is a series of bloodlines and a secret society network that actually began in the ancient world, far, far back. Babylon was one of its major centers, which is why, as I show in the books, there's so much Babylonian symbolism all around us, because the same mentality, the same networks, the same bloodlines are still in control. And what they did was expand out of the Near and Middle East into Europe, where these bloodlines became the aristocracy and royal families of Europe. And thanks to the European empires, particularly the British Empire, of course, on which they said the sun never set, it was so vast, these bloodlines were exported all over the world. And they ran the colonies. They ran the colonies of what became the United States. And what happened then is that there was a switch from one kind of dictatorship to another, and the one they switched to is the far more potent form of dictatorship. One dictatorship, which has a finite life, is one that you can see, touch and taste. It's Hitler's Germany, it's Stalin's Russia, Soviet Union. You know where you stand. It's apartheid in South Africa. You know who the controllers are, you know you're controlled. Now, because you have a target, the human desire for freedom will eventually, it might take some time, will eventually rebel against that. And that's basically what you had when this network was running the colonies of America and the other places around the world in its empire. However, the most potent form of control is what I call the prison without the bars. And what happened when the colonial powers like the British appeared to pull back and give independence to the United States and independence to African countries and that stuff, is actually they replaced overt dictatorship with covert dictatorship. The covert dictatorship is far more potent because people do not rebel against not being free when they actually believe they are. It's like they sit there and cook because the water's being heated very slowly.
The frog in the pot.
Absolutely, the frog in the thing, frog in the saucepan. So what happened is that when the British Empire apparently retracted out of the United States, they left behind here the bloodline and the secret society network through which the bloodline manipulates itself into power, and they have gone on controlling the United States ever since. One of the great myths of the world is the problems are caused by, originally in their base form, by big bad satanic America. America has been set up by the Illuminati powers, this network, in Europe, as the fall guy, to get people looking over there at big bad America. It's all America! And therefore, people are not turning around and seeing where the real power is. The present ludicrous, lunatic administration of George Bush may be firing literally the bullets, but they're loaded in Europe. Not by the governments of Europe, but by the center of this web, the secret society web, that for historical reasons has been located.
Do you have any names?
Well, if you look at the major banking families, you look at the major families that control the transnational corporations, you look at the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, what they've created as they've passed through history, expanding their power all the time, is a structure of, like Russian dolls, one doll inside a bigger doll inside a bigger doll. Their structure is small pyramids inside bigger pyramids inside bigger pyramids until you have a global pyramid that encompasses all the others. And if you look at this pyramid structure, look at any organization, a business, a bank, a university, a government, they're all structured as pyramids. At the top, you've got a tiny, tiny few people who know what the real deal is in that organization, what the real motivation is, what the agenda is. As you come down the pyramids, you meet more and more people in the organizations, but as they come down, they know less and less of what the organization's really about. They only know their little part in it. They're not trying to manipulate a global fascist state. They're trying to earn money for their family.
Useless dudes.
Yeah, so when people say, it's the government, it's the Freemasons, it's not. The vast majority of people in government have no idea that they are daily playing a part in building not just a global prison, but let's be fair, their own prison for their own children also. Same with journalists and stuff like that. So this pyramid structure, what they do is as you come up it, people who are not in the game, or are not acceptable to this power elite, are filtered out. So by the time you get to the peaks of the pyramids in these major organizations, only those either serving the agenda or acceptable to it are there. So if people want names, just look at the families and the people who are running the major corporations, the major banks who are at the top of the pyramids in government, and you're looking at people who are either placemen in awareness or placemen who are just there to do a job for this elite without fully realizing what they're part of. And this elite, this Illuminati, has been expanding its power all the way through these centuries with the idea, the motivation, the agenda of taking the planet over. So if you go from Babylon, their headquarters in the ancient world, they then moved to Rome. And what happened when they headquartered in Rome? We had the Roman Empire, we had the creation of the Roman Church. You then move further through history, and although it's still massively influential in Rome and that part of the world, it moved further up into Europe, and it's centered in places like London particularly, Paris and Germany. That's where, at operational level, the bullets are loaded, and like I say, they get America to shoot them, so everyone's looking over there when the power's over here. And the idea, obviously, a simple mathematical equation. If there's a few of you, and in awareness compared with the global population, there's not many of these people, you have to centralize decision making, because the more points of decision making there are, the more diversity of decision making there is, the less control you're going to have over it. Symbolically, it's like someone on a stage, like, you know, they spin those plates on sticks. If you've got loads and loads of plates and sticks all over the stage, you're kind of running around trying to keep them all going. And eventually they're going to start crashing. What you want to make it most efficient and easiest for you is you want one big plate and one big stick. You stand there and do that all day. So this is why we've had this incessant movement of centralization in all areas of our lives. It's not by accident, it's by design. Because they want to create a situation, and in Europe, of course, we've already got the European Union, which is a centralized fascist body which dictates to the countries of Europe. Countries that previously were making their own decisions are now having them dictated to from a central point. And that's one step from the goal, which is world government, in which a world government would make all the major decisions affecting a country's politics, a country's economy, a country's military capability. A world army, which I had a mainstream journalist say to me, what's the good of a world army? There'd be no one to fight, you know. And I thought, you're a mainstream journalist, aren't you? Of course, why a world army? To impose the decisions of the world government. Hello, you know, intelligent life calling planet Earth. And then you have the World Central Bank, the ones. Of course, we've got the European Central Bank now in Frankfurt, the centre for the Rothschilds throughout history. And they want a world currency which would not be physical money, it would be electronic and cashless society, for which there are fundamental implications for freedom. And they want the jewel in the crown of this agenda, which is the microchip population. And
which they're starting in the United States. People
Absolutely.
are literally taking it.
Exactly.
Lining up to take it.
Yes, they are. And you know, when I and of course many others were writing about this many years ago, this was the agenda. People were laughing in your face. Yeah. And so what we're seeing in the world, once you know the agenda, which is centralization of global power, a global dictatorship, and you understand the methods and how they bring this about, like this classic method that I call problem, reaction, solution, where you create the problem, you blame someone else for it, you get the public to see the problem the way you want it, and you get the public to say, hey, something must be done about this, what are you going to do about it? And then those who covertly created the problem offer the solutions to the problems they've created, which change society in ways that would not be accepted by the public without the initial problem. I've just described September the 11th, by the way.
Yeah.
So once you know the methods, like problem, reaction, solution, you know the goal, which is this centralized state, the world suddenly goes, whoa, I can see it now. You turn on CNN, you know, Criminal News Network, you turn on ABC, bang, you can see it happening in front of your eyes. And the left in politics has now discovered in the last few years globalization. But unfortunately, you know, the left in politics, and I'm not left, right, I reject it all. It's all a nonsense. But the left in politics are what they call themselves, and still struggle to see that globalization, which is what? Centralization of global power. It is the agenda unfolding. They struggle to get their heads around the fact that this is not globalization caused by big bad corporations that want bigger and bigger profits and exploit the people. That the corporations are not the end, they are the means or a means to an end, which is total centralization of power in all areas of our lives. There was a documentary in Britain by an Australian journalist called John Pilger about globalization, in which he pointed out that a quarter now of the world's economic activity is down to 200 corporations. Now, that's basically where the left sees it. If you go to the next stage, and you realize how this Russian doll, pyramid within pyramid structure works, those 200 corporations are actually one corporation. And when you get to that level, you see the world in a totally different way. I mean, you know, when you've got documents coming to light written for the Bush administration before it was illegally put into power, which are talking about using Iraq as an excuse to enter the Middle East, that Syria and Iran were going to be targets, so was North Korea, and they want the democratization of China with American troops playing a part in that. And then, since the Bush administration has come to power, that document is unfolded on the news. And as I'm speaking to you now, we have the next stage of the Middle Eastern situation being prepared, with Powell and Rumsfeld and people like that talking about terrorism and what have you, involving Syria and all this stuff with Iran. They're just setting out the agenda. And what they have to do, of course, Mike, is they have to obscure the real game with the movie. So they'll invent that they're liberating Iraq. They'll invent the fact that Osama bin Laden was the orchestrator of 9/11 for the excuse to go into Afghanistan and all that stuff. So that's why I call CNN the movie channel. And if people want to know what's really going on, the mainstream media is not the place to go. It's the alternative media.
What about DavidIcke.com? I bet you have some information on there to share.
Well, we've got 5,000 web pages there.
Wow.
But we have a headlines page that is updated every day, and there's a fantastic amount of information on that. Basically, it's there for what I'm talking about. If people watch the mainstream news, they're not watching what's happening. They're watching what the authorities want people to believe is happening. So what I do on the website, and what other people, of course, do with their websites, with the same motivation, is balance that by presenting the information the mainstream won't tell you.
Yeah.
And I have to say, even on a basic logical point of view, what they don't want us to know clearly makes absolute sense of events that seem unexplainable without the knowledge of the agenda behind them.
Well, if these people we're talking about are so powerful, how are they going to let the internet just continue to expand? Do you think they'll shut that down eventually?
Well, I mean, if you read this document, which was written for the Bush administration before it came to power in September 2000, it talks about these countries which have since been targeted exactly as the document says. What it also says is they want control of cyberspace to stop the enemies of America getting information out. What they mean is the people who've sussed the game and want to communicate to others getting information out. What I think about the internet is that I think there are many, many levels of it. But first of all, it exists because of military technology. They've not allowed the internet to become what it is unless there was an ulterior motive for them. There was something in it for them. And my feeling is this. There are some very, very good things about the internet in relation to their agenda. First of all, you can get a profile of someone by following their movements through websites and stuff. Email is the easiest form of communication to monitor. And so there are some very good things in terms of surveillance. But there are some very bad things too that come with that, which is websites that are now getting tremendous hits and growing all the time, which are actually exposing the game. And what I think, Mike, is their agenda is to give the impression, first of all, as they have, that this is like freedom of information, and then start, and they're already doing it, start to pick off the bad things on the internet in relation to their agenda, while keeping the good things, which is the ability for surveillance and many other points. So I think the internet will definitely be targeted, and is being targeted. Let's be fair. I mean, we've got a good server now who is very supportive, but we've had to move, I think, 3 or 4 times.
Wow.
Because the server was threatened or challenged or whatever, and they've said, oh no, there's too much trouble. Go.
Let me ask you one more question about Bush administration, and then I want to move on to some local issues about Austin, because there's some people that have read your books here that said you talk about Austin a little bit in some of your books about the University of Texas having the tower that looks like the owl.
Well, I can't say I'm an expert on what's going on in Austin, but Texas in general is a very, very important place for the Illuminati. I mean, you'll know from your own research the number of times, if you follow the trail, it comes back to Texas. You know, the oil industry alone is completely controlled by these people. You've got the Bush family connection to Texas. I mean, the Bush family are.
Well, actually, we don't claim them here.
No, they claim you.
Some of us don't.
They claim you, I know.
Yeah.
But I mean, what the Bush family? I mean, you couldn't make up their family history. It is so utterly grotesque, and of course, a lot of it's gone on in Texas. So it's
Bohemia Grove, Skull and Bones. You talk about that in your books.
Yeah, the thing is, Mike, that as I researched this over the years, I have no belief system to defend. Therefore, I go where the information takes me. I don't edit because, oh no, if I go there, my belief system might be challenged. I'm not going there. I go wherever the information takes me. And so I've gone into some real challenging places, and one of the things that staggered me most is that we have this idea that human sacrifice ritual and the sacrifice of children is like some ancient, pagan, historical kind of aberration. It's all happened a long time ago. Well, not only is it going on today, it is going on at a scale that is beyond the imagination, and it's being performed by some of the most famous people in America and the world. It's being performed, these sacrificial rituals, by the people like the Bush family, by the royal family of Britain, who are steeped in this blood ritual, because it goes all the way back to Babylon, and before that, but you can pick it up in Babylon quite comfortably. So they're performing the same rituals. Now,
you don't have to convince me, because
no.
I've been there.
All right, absolutely. So, I mean, Bohemian Grove is the most famous of these places, but they go on all over the world, and Europe and Britain are a massive centre for Satanism.
How high up is the Bush family in the Illuminati?
Well, I think Father George Bush, as presidents go, is very high in the American hierarchy. Because most presidents, including his son, I mean, crikey, you know, if George W. Bush had a brain cell, it would die of loneliness, you know. So he's not. I mean, he's an absolute puppet pulled by Cheney and his father and what have you. But Bush the father is, as presidents go, pretty high up there, because the people with the real power, really orchestrating this, they are not going to put themselves on public display where they can be identified. They operate in the shadows. So the people that make political office, even President of the United States, they're nowhere near the top, and they're just expendable people. And we have to get over this idea, if we're going to see what's going on, this basic idea that the president runs the country. The president is a puppet who runs the country on behalf of those that put him there. I mean, I love this thing. Anyone can become president of the United States. I love it. I mean, hey, I mean, crikey, it'll be on HBO or something, and there, a comedy channel. The president doesn't run the country, and neither can anyone become president. When you look at the presidents from George Washington to George W. Bush, and you go through their genealogy, we have, 280 million people or something like that in America now. Look at the millions, hundreds of millions more since 1776 and the Declaration of Independence. America is also an incredibly diverse people in terms of their genetic history. If anyone can become president of the United States, clearly the presidents of the United States, from Washington to Bush, should reflect, increasingly so now, this fantastic genetic diversity. When you do their genealogy, The presidents of the United States are no less a royal dynasty than those in Britain and Europe. Because their bloodlines go back to the royal families and aristocracy of Europe, which go back down into the nearer Middle East. We are looking at the same interbreeding tribe that have just expanded their power over the centuries and now have reached a point, because of the centralization, where they can make their final play to take the whole place over with this centralized structure. And if people find it hard to believe that people would be in power because of their bloodline or anything like that, well, I would just take them on a trip to Buckingham Palace. We have a head of state in Britain who is only the Queen because of her DNA. Only. If she had a different DNA, she might be cleaning the throne, not sitting on it. This is how ludicrous it gets, right? Now, people say, oh yeah, well that's kings and queens, yes, yeah, because that's their bloodline, yeah, right, okay. Well, hold on a minute. They call them kings and queens, therefore, you say, oh yes, it's bloodline and all that stuff. What actually happened is, when the people started to rebel against this overt, in-your-face dictatorship by royal king and queen, these bloodlines started going into other places of power. They went into the new politics, they went into the banking, they went into the ownership of business and what have you. Media. Ownership of the media, big one. Of course, if you want to sell people a movie, a lie, to obscure what's really going on, then you need to control the major sources of information that people are going to receive, because then you can sell them the lie, and that's why the media is owned by this Illuminati. So, like I say, the presidents of the United States are no more or less a royal dynasty than those in Europe. And when you look at some of the things that Burke's Peerage, this Bible of European royal and aristocratic genealogy based in London, has said, how about this? And what are the chances of this? This is Burke's Peerage. Every single presidential election, from George Washington to George W. Bush, has been won by the candidate with the most royal genes. From
wow,
Europe. Every one, bar none, not one exception. It's come to the point where, if you do the genealogy of the two presidential candidates, you can tell which one's going to win. It's extraordinary. Why was it that George W. Bush, this village idiot, attracted record amounts of money for his presidential campaign? Because he was the chosen one. And even though he was such a bad candidate and couldn't even win with that, they just rigged the thing in Florida, and away you went. And now we have an unelected dictator taking America into war, and the world into war after war. I mean, you couldn't make this up. It's so ludicrous. And it's time, really, for people pulling no punches to stop sitting on their butts, stop watching the world pass them by, stop letting life live them, and starting to live life and affect their own reality. And instead of saying, well, nothing I can do about it, get up, get on with it. Things are being done. When I first started this journey, you're looking at a man who spoke to 8 people in Chicago, all right?
And how many did you have here in Tyler? Over 500?
Yeah, I mean, I have not spoken to anything but a full audience for 18 months anywhere in the world, including places like Japan. So you can do it. And there are people who are doing what I'm doing right across America, and many around Austin. And
Austin's a hotbed.
Yeah,
we're talking about the New World Order.
Absolutely.
We have a lot of hosts there.
And so it should be. We're having Governor Bush over there all these years. I mean, crikey. I mean, not only Bush, and not only is Bush an idiot, he's actually a very arrogant, vicious idiot, and that's quite a compelling combination. But the fact is, you can do things. You see, it's a very simple equation here. They control by controlling the information that people receive. If we are going to, and we are in the process of dismantling this, then alternative information that tells the truth about the movie and exposes it needs to get out there. Now, everyone has got a mouth. Everyone. And everyone's got a voice box, or virtually everyone. And therefore, we can articulate and pass this on. And so, it's ridiculous to say there's nothing we can do. We can get onto radio phone-ins on radio shows that don't talk about this, and bring those issues into the debate and what have you. Because what I found,
radio shows that Clear Channel hadn't bought the radio stations in, because they're busy buying all the radio stations in Texas and in the United States. I don't know if they're doing that.
Well, this is one of the things they're doing now. I think they've realized that there is a challenge coming here, and people are in increasingly vast numbers are so open to this. I tell you what it is. This is why it's so important to communicate this stuff. Is the number of people who come across this information that didn't know it existed, and they go, "Do you know, I thought that was going on. I've always thought that," but they haven't talked about it. And then they realise that their friends thought like that too, but they haven't talked about it either. We need to start communicating this, and then we'll realise just how many people out there are actually of like mind, but because they haven't spoken to each other.
Bring the sign down a little
I
bit.
support my president, and I'm willing to die for him and my country.
Say you love George Bush. You love him.
All right, you can read it. Can't you read?
But you won't say it.
I love George Bush. I love George W. Bush and number 41.
What about Clinton? Bush Jr. is like Clinton on steroids. They're confiscating the guns.
There he goes.
Hey,
Do a jig for Bush.
Listen, look.
You wouldn't believe the people I run into. They are out there now saying, "We love Bush. He's our hero." I ran into a bunch of them yesterday, and they just cannot see through. They love Bush and he's our hero. It's turned around from hating Clinton to loving Bush now.
Well, you see,
how is that? I mean, how is that?
Well, how it works is this, and I've got to be honest here. I mean, that's all I can be. There is a part of the mentality of quite a lot of Americans, I find, that can be activated by what I call the John Wayne mentality. John Wayne was a kind of a symbol of how they wanted to be, the cavalry coming over the horizon. And here's John, big, go get him, John, okay, to hell I will, all that stuff. And what the Bush administration does, and how he conducts himself, because I'm sure he thinks he's bloody John Wayne, they activate that part of the psyche of many Americans, particularly American, men and all that stuff, the macho men, that start to see the world in this black and white terms of good and bad. We're for freedom and all that stuff, liberating people, and that makes them feel good. Gives them a kind of power. Yeah, so we're good guys. Yeah, we'll sort it out. Hey, we're strong. We're tough. Hey. But what I do find is that more and more Americans are rejecting that simplistic, ludicrous vision of life. But of course there's still large numbers who do see it like that. And the people that do, Bush would be a hero. Because he even walks like John Wayne, doesn't he? He gets off that bloody helicopter, walks across the lawn. I always think, looks like he needs the bathroom. It was a bit late the way he walks there. I always get that feeling, Did you miss the bathroom, Jordan? Probably, So he does exude that. Just as Reagan was someone who played to the heartstrings of the American dream emotionally on another level. And I mean, this guy was another guy who just about knew how to tie his shoelaces. But because in his B-movie actor manner, he was able to articulate this American dream kind of deal. He pulled people towards him. And what Bush is doing is playing that John Wayne character, really. It does have an effect, but only for a while, because the consequences that are coming of this whole agenda for America are absolutely horrendous. First of all, it's going to destroy the economy.
Well, doesn't freedom start here in America? Because we're now seeing on our streets, and we have video of this, of police wearing black ski masks, no name tags, combat boots, ninja suits.
Y'all are not supposed to be wearing black ski masks. You're not supposed to be covering your identity. This is for the record. What is your name for the record, sir? You're covering your identity like a criminal. You are not supposed to be covering your...
Hey, Mike, wonderful scrap of wood before the...
I'm sure they are.
Right there.
Where? Oh. I gotta get that. Oh, that is perfect. What is your name, sir? You're covering your identity too.
Hey, everybody sit back down for this fellas.
Nobody else is on the sidewalk around here. Are you playing favorites? What is your name for the record, sir? If you're going to tell me an order, you need to give me a name and a badge number.
They were congratulating you guys. They were imitating you.
Well, they're wearing black ski masks. Black ski masks. They're covering their identity. I don't like it. You're not supposed to be covering your identity up. You're not supposed to be covering your identity up. Hey!
Well, doesn't freedom start here in America? Because we're now seeing on our streets, and we have video of this, police wearing black ski masks, no name tags, combat boots, ninja suits. I mean, it's all, the police state is coming down. They have the Patriot Act 1, the Patriot Act 2 coming down that Bush is hopefully not going to sign, 2. But, I mean, does freedom start with America, or are we trying to get everybody else free? How does that work?
I think America was set up to be a vehicle for this agenda to manifest globally. And ironically, while Bush is articulating about, as you point out, freeing other countries and liberating other countries, while this is going on, the liberation of America is being destroyed by the day.
I agree with
Now, I am suspect of any country which has to tell its people over and over again, this is the land of the free. If it was the land of the free, it should be patently obvious. Yeah. And what happens, Mike, and I found this with people I've met over the years, is that when they're not touched by it directly, they kind of detach from it. Oh no, this is the land of the free. And then something happens in their lives, and suddenly they realize, hey, this is a fascist state, this is a police state. So, to a large extent, a lot of people are only going to wake up when they're faced in their own experience with the reality of what's going on. Because what happens with these authoritarian states is that as long as the people abide by the rules, the people are basically left alone. Once they don't abide by the rules, then they're jumped upon. If you take the example of troops, when troops play by the rules and they do as they're told and they go out and blow people away in Iraq or wherever, they're fine. They're heroes, you know, great heroes, you're so brave. When they come home with Gulf War syndrome,
Yeah.
Suddenly they're not playing by the rules. Hey, you're complaining about this, you're causing us a problem here, and suddenly they're not heroes anymore. And this is the way the system works, the carrot and the stick. And so people are going to realize more and more as this fascist state closes in, this police state closes in, more and more people are going to be affected directly by its imposition. And it's going to have the ironic effect of waking more and more people up to this. And I think that's already happening, you know, because more and more people are being affected by this imposition that's unfolding by the day. I mean, what's happened since 9/11 is extraordinary. that people can stand by and watch that happen and think it's okay. But what is it? Problem, reaction, solution. Hey, they've got to do this to save us from the terrorists. No, if you want to be saved from the terrorists, go and knock on the door of the White House and tell them to stop, you know. And so we are in a situation now, a fork in the road, where we do have the choice of going one way and bringing true freedom to our experience, or going the other way. Not very long down that road, we're going to live in a global fascist state, absolutely certain, because that's the agenda and it's unfolding in front of our eyes.
We are so grateful that you gave us this time on Access TV in Austin, Texas. Before we go, we had some questions that came from people in Austin. Steve, what were some of those questions that they wanted you to answer? Do you have time just to answer just a few questions?
Sure, yeah.
What was your impressions of the Columbia and what happened there?
I've not researched that enough. Someone has shown me in the last few days a picture they say they got from the CIA, which apparently has laser beams going up to it as it exploded. But you know, I don't talk about things I have not researched. However, when you look at the symbolism of the Illuminati and their obsession with symbolism, the fact that it was called the Columbia, it can be very significant, because just very quickly, talking about the symbolism, back in Babylon, they worshipped a trinity of Nimrod, the father, Ninus Tammuz, the son, and the third point of the Babylonian trinity was a female called Queen Semiramis. They used to symbolize Queen Semiramis as a dove. When they moved their headquarters from Babylon to Rome, they used to worship Queen Semiramis there under the name Venus the Dove. Venus the Dove was, pronounced Venus Columba, Columba meaning dove. The French for dove even today is Columba. So when a guy called Colon crossed the Atlantic to discover the Americas, history has called him Columbus, Columba, Semiramis. And when you look at the way that the Babylonians symbolize Queen Semiramis, it is a mirror of the Statue of Liberty. And the Statue of Liberty was given to New York by French Freemasons in Paris, who knew what it really symbolized, which was the Babylonian goddess. And what is she holding? She's holding the lighted torch, the classic symbol of the Illuminati, the illuminated ones. Now, as these bloodlines moved up through Europe, as I talked about earlier, they went massively through France and centered in France to a very large extent. And therefore, if you look at the symbol of the French Republic, what they call the goddess of the French Republic, which you can see all over Paris, it's another mirror of Queen Semiramis, the Babylonian goddess, because we're talking the same group. And on an island in the River Seine in Paris, just down from the Eiffel Tower and the Pont d'Alma tunnel where they killed Diana, is a mirror image. It's extraordinary when you stand there on the side of the river. I was there a few months ago. A mirror image of the Statue of Liberty in the middle of the River Seine. Why? Because that is their image of the Babylonian goddess, and in New York you've got the American image of the Babylonian goddess. And what they do is they work with reverse symbolism. So if something in mainstream society is white, it will be black. They'll portray it as black. If it's black, they'll portray it as white. So what you have is classic reverse symbolism in New York Harbor, because Americans understandably think that's the symbol of the land of the free, when actually it's the reverse of that is the symbol of the people controlling the prison. This whole Babylonian thing is extremely important to them in their symbolism, and it's all around us. Yeah.
What was the other question?
The other one is the UT Tower is an obelisk in Austin. Charles Whitman, I believe in '66, killed many people there. The tower was designed by an architect from Rice University in Houston, and their motto is the Rice Owls. Mm-hmm. After the Whitman shooting, the LA Police Department started SWAT, and then in 1968 we had the gun laws in the United States, where we've lost most of the gun freedom. I was wondering, do you think that Charles Whitman was a typical problem reaction solution for not only getting SWAT, but creating the gun laws of '68? Are you familiar with the shooting?
Well, I can't talk about that in detail, having not researched it, but the principle is exactly the way they play it. For instance, in Britain, we had this guy called Thomas Hamilton, who was a clearly programmed being, who was a Freemason in Scotland, and there's a massive scandal to come out about this, who went into a school in Dunblane, if you remember, and blew away a school hall full of kids. Now, what's come out since are his connections in terms of child sex to some very famous people in Britain. So clearly, the man who did the deed with the gun in that school was a connected person to this elite. What happened as a result of that? We had very, very significant changes in gun laws in Britain. If you look at and I've studied this whole mind control thing to a very, very large extent. I've talked to many of these people who are recovering from government mind control. And it is absolutely massive. And what they do is they program them to have different little compartments of the mind. And each compartment thinks it's the whole mind. And they just program those compartments, and then they move them around. They'll give them what they call a front altar, which is the personality that people think is them as they interact with daily life. But behind, in the subconscious, are all these programmed amnesic barriers, which they then bring forward, like the Manchurian candidate, this is a classic expression of this, to the front of the mind. And at that point, that person's front personality is now pushed back, and this programmed personality is there, and it carries out the programming. Now, when you look at the background to these kids who go crazy with guns, like in Columbine, Columbia, Semiramis, it's all symbolism. These are clearly programmed kids who are programmed to carry out these acts which create an animosity, which create a fear, which create more gun laws. And I'm frankly not into guns. I don't own a gun. I don't use guns. I'm not interested in guns. I don't like guns and all that stuff. But if we're going to be streetwise, a lot of people say, oh, we must get rid of guns, they're dangerous. Well, I can understand that, but hold on, take a deep breath. Just look at it from a bigger picture. Why do these guys actually suddenly want rid of them all? Why? Because if you want to control the people, then if they're unarmed, or as much unarmed as you can, clearly they are going to be a lot less trouble when you go in with your literally army to take over than they are otherwise. So for me, that's what these gun laws are really about. And I must say, I can only say what I think. I frankly, personally, wouldn't trust Charlton Heston to tell me the time, personally. And I think people that are opposing these changes in gun laws and stuff should keep their eye on Charlton Heston.
She had another question.
I have one question. The programming of alters, can it only be done with children, or is it possible to do this with a 50-year-old functioning adult?
It's possible to do it, because what they use now is much more sophisticated technology, but it is much more difficult. What they want, ideally, is children before the age of 5 and 6, because then the brain's not fully formed and the things are not absolutely in place, and they can start, basically they rewire the mind, and it's much easier with a child. And so what they do is, there is a mechanism in the mind which shuts out the memory of extreme trauma. This is what comes in when you have a really bad road accident and people can't remember the immediate run-up to the accident, and the immediate aftermath. That's a good thing, because the mind shuts out this horrible memory which they don't want the conscious mind to keep reliving. What they realized is that if this mechanism could be used to turn the minds of people, children, starting with children, into a honeycomb of these self-contained amnesic barriers shutting out trauma. But to do that, they have to put the children through absolute horrendous trauma. I mean, I've talked to some of these people, many of these people around the world who were programmed in this way as children. And of course, they start as children, yeah, but they keep it going. And they're forced to watch animals being sacrificed. They're forced to watch children being sacrificed. They're drugged so that they do horrendous things under the drug. It's videoed, and then they play the video back, and they say, see what you've done? And they say, hey, we won't tell the police if you do what we say. This is what they're doing to kids, right? And what it does is, every time a child undergoes this trauma, it what they call dissociates. It shuts it out, puts this amnesic barrier around it. And this creates the honeycomb of amnesic barriers, which they then program. One thing they do is they program assassination codes. How many times is someone the Illuminati want taken out actually taken out by a lone nutter? Who are these kids that go around shooting people in Columbine and get changes in society as a result? They're people who have gone through this programming. But the other thing that they use these people for, don't they, Georgie Bush, the father, is to allow very famous people to have sex with them. And what happens is they activate a part of the mind, an altar. So the famous people or person has sex with a child, and then they push that altar back, bring the front altar forward, the base personality. And this personality has not experienced being sexually abused by Father George Bush or whoever. Therefore, it has no memory of it. And so this is going on all the time. It's going on in the millions in America alone, never mind in Europe. And one of the people that was really at the heart of developing this was Joseph Mengele, who developed this technique in the concentration camps, where, of course, they had endless people to experiment on. And then, of course, he wasn't caught after the war. Hey, just like Osama bin Laden. And he was actually brought to America and South America. He worked in both places to carry on and introduce this process of mind control in America. And this infamous mind control operation of the CIA, which actually came to light in public, MK Ultra, one of the key people behind that was Joseph Mengele. And one of the places he used to work out of was the China Lake Naval Weapons Center in California. So what I understand as we go through the years is that they're perfecting these techniques all the time, so that more and more they are able to mind control people electronically through technology, which would, to come around to your question again, would make it more easier to mind control older people with this technology, rather than having to go through this process they have before of starting with children. By the way, just a quick point. Talking about mind control, what is mind control? Mind control is someone getting you to behave the way they want you to, right? Under that definition, 99.999% of people of the world are experiencing minute-by-minute mind control. Anyone who believes that Osama bin Laden was behind 9/11 is mind controlled, because they're believing something that's not true, but what the people programming them through the media want them to believe. Sorry. Well, I can understand how they do that.
Will Thomas out of British Columbia put out
That's right, I met him.
quite a bit about chemtrails, and he showed where they were doing it in England and all over the world. We've got a bunch of pictures here of what they've been doing in Austin. I was wondering if you could, you write a lot about frequency in your book. Supposedly the thing is they're doing is using frequency and advanced Tesla technology things to control the weather and all this other stuff. And I was just wondering if you could comment on
on the chemtrail epidemic, if you know anything about it.
Well, in terms of controlling the weather and what have you, everything is a frequency in the world that we live in. Everything's a frequency. Rain's a frequency. Therefore, if you can generate that frequency, you're going to generate its physical manifestation. Now, when Native Americans used to do their rain dance and all that stuff, and the shaman and the people used to do the stuff, the rituals to make it rain, basically what they were doing was playing with this frequency to make it rain. That's what they were doing. That's what these people do. It's all frequency. So they can now do it with technology, you know, they can cause tremendous problems by manipulating the weather in certain areas. I must say that in terms of chemtrails, I've been to over 40 countries as my research. I have seen these things everywhere, it seems that they possibly contain some kind of chemical or combination of chemicals which are affecting people physically. Because, see, one of the points to make is that the human entity is an incredibly powerful, something incredibly powerful to control. And so we have to be hit for them to do that on every level. And what you find when you start to look at these pyramids, and how all the pyramids go into the same pyramid peak, the companies that provide the medical drugs are controlled by the same people that put the additives in food, the same people that come up with things like aspartame, which is a mind suppressant. And who was the man who brought aspartame to the world? Donald Rumsfeld, the present Defense Secretary, who was hired by Searle Pharmaceuticals to use his contacts in the Reagan-Bush administration to force through the Food and Drug Administration approval for aspartame, when all the independent data was saying it should never ever be used. Aspartame is a mind suppressant. It was brought in soft drinks to start with. It's a sugar substitute. It's 200 times greater than sugar, sweeter than sugar, and now it's in almost all foods. What is it there for? So then you have the banking system, which is to control and pressure people through money. And so all these different things, then you have all the mind things and the electromagnetic things that affect us electromagnetically. All these things are thrown at us, and the chemtrails are one of them, to hold us in this servitude. Now that says something. It says how powerful we are. And it's symbolically, we're like a ball floating on a tank of water. If you want to hold that ball down at the bottom of the water, you have to put it down and you have to hold it there. You have to hold it there, because the moment you let the ball go, boom, its natural state is on top of the water. Our natural state is genius. And to hold us out of that state, to hold us in this servitude and this sheep-like mentality, they have to hit us at every single level of our being. Physically, chemically, electromagnetically, through the mind, all that stuff, through the emotions, and this is just one expression of that. But what the chemicals actually are designed to do, I don't know. But the fact that this is going on all over the world is you know, beyond question.
He's running out of time. You had one more question on the Pink Floyd thing. What was that about?
Oh, it was I don't know, maybe a silly question. Whether you knew Roger Waters or David Gilmour, and whether you thought that they might be Tavistock trained.
Don't know. Don't know. What I will say is this, that the music industry is extremely important to the Illuminati, like the movie industry is, because it affects us so much in terms of our minds. What is music? It is very clearly vibration. And so this is why some music grates with us and some we feel good about. And so through music, they can affect us vibrationally. And they're doing so all the time. And I tell you what, it's kind of funny. The more that I talk to people who've been involved in the mind control operations, and people who have been programmed and what have you, the names that they reel off of people who either helped to program them or were themselves programmed, it's like, basically, it's like a roll call for the Oscars, you know. And you know, when you think about it, if they are able to move you between personalities, what better state to be a great actor or actress if they can do that? And so a lot of these very, very famous people are actually either programmers or are themselves programmed, and it's the same throughout the music industry. And one of the major areas that comes up again and again in the reports of these people is the country music industry in America. I mean, what a den that is in terms of this whole deal we've been talking about, Satanism and mind control. So yeah, and then you start looking who controls the music industry, you know. Was it right, the Carlyle Group, George W. Bush, had just bought Universal? Of course! Makes absolute bloody sense. And what they do, again, this, is those that are coming from a point of view in music or in movies where they wish to express something positive or tell the truth or what have you, they're filtered out. Oh no, I don't think we'll go with that contract, I don't think we'll go with that group, I don't think we'll go with that movie, and this is how it's done. You know, it's so simple. If you control the top of the pyramid, then you control what happens below the pyramid, until we wake up and start rebelling, that is, which we're beginning to do, thank goodness.
David Icke, it has been a pleasure.
Pleasure.
And I want to thank Sue Ann, Jimmy Gardner, Mason, and Steve Blaha for filming this, and this will be on Access TV. Can you just tell us real quick how many books you have out and what the names of them are?
Oh, go. Oh, I have quite a few. My latest one is Alice in Wonderland at the World Trade Center disaster, widely official story of man, one is a monumental lie. 3-year-old could take it apart, 500 pages. One's called The Children of the Matrix. One's called The Biggest Secret, which you have there. Another one's called And the Truth Shall Set You Free. One's called I Am Me, I Am Free. And, you know, they're the ones, really, that have... I've done in more recent times, but it's a progression. It's a story. Each of them is part of the story. You put them all together, you get the picture. But it's very encouraging for me, having walked this road, as I'm sure we all have, years ago, when no one wanted to know, to see that the awakening is with us. And I'm hoping someone suggested it that. They may put a talk on for me in Austin this year, which would be great.
We hope so. DavidIcke.com is the website.
That's the one.
And one more thing, if you want to look in this camera and tell Austin, Texas, Travis County, anything you want to tell them, David Icke, and we'll wrap it up.
Over that one, well, what can I say? Well, first of all, I'm not a guru sitting on a mountain cross-legged saying, I have all the answers, use me. What I will say is this, it's something I've learned about myself. We all have this idea that we are ordinary men and women in the street, and we've got no power. That's exactly what the game wants us to believe. People who think they're ordinary live ordinary lives. People who who think they have no power live powerless lives. Neither because they are ordinary or powerless, but because they believe they are. And what this whole deal is indoctrinating and conditioning into people a sense of limitation, a sense of powerlessness, a sense that you can do nothing, because with that mentality, we are a party trick for these guys to control and manipulate. More and more people, however, are starting to realize, as I have on my journey, that I am not ordinary, and I'm not powerless. I am all-powerful, and I am unique, and I can control my reality. I can dictate what happens in my life because I'm actually in control of it. What we've done is we've allowed this conditioned reality of ordinariness and powerlessness to dictate our sense of what we can do, to dictate the sense of what we can manifest in our lives, when in fact we're completely in control of our lives. We've just given that power away. The only power these people have over us is the power we give to them. If George Bush makes a statement and says, we've had a discussion and this is what we decided to do, and the people say, no, we're not. Where's George Bush's power? Nowhere. He ain't got any power. except that which we give to him. And if we're going to make a difference in the world and change these things we don't like, we need to take our power back. And that means starting with ourselves and realizing we have power in the first place. The power to dictate our own destiny. The power not to have to do what other people tell us we should do. Not to think the way people tell us that we should think. Not to keep our mouths shut and our heads down because we're worried about what other people think. Who cares what they think? They have a right to think what they like, but so do we. And the more people that start speaking out and expressing this uniqueness that we have, instead of being a clone of the system, the more the system will start to disintegrate, because it depends on clones, and it's terrified of people expressing their uniqueness and expressing what they really believe and living the lives they really want to live, because that breaks up the uniformity that holds this whole deal together. Be yourself, change yourself, and you change the world, because you are the world and the world is us. That's what I've found anyway.
Thank you, David Icke. And we'll see you next time, Austin, Texas. Thanks and God bless.
Thank you.